Welcome back to the Investor Professor Podcast. This is Dr. Ryan Peckham, and this is episode 150. Happy anniversary. And it's not just the anniversary of the podcast, 150 episodes, but it's also the 2-year anniversary of the bull market that we are currently in. Yesterday, October 12th of 2022, was the official 2-year anniversary of the low from the last stock market low. And so everything's looking pretty good. So I have some statistics on that, and also on our little podcast here, and some of the things I have learned after recording 150 of these. So get your mind right, let's have some fun, and let's get to work. Well, welcome back to the show, everybody. Happy 150 episodes, as I discussed in the top part of the show. I'll get some of those statistics for you, and also we'll talk about this bull market that we're into. So, like I discussed in the beginning, yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of the latest bull market. And so, find that interesting. It's wonderful. The market has done very well, but you start thinking about, man, are we due for some type of correction? How long is this going to last? All of those things start to creep into everybody's minds. And so I went back and looked. And when you look at bull markets, the average bull market is 46 months. And so October 12th of 2022 is when we kind of hit the market low. And so we're 24 months from that point. So if the average bull market is 46 months, currently, from that low, the S&P is up 60% from that low. The average bull market is about 110% increase. So it would seem that we still have some room to run here, if you will. And of course, we're always monitoring things. We discuss that a lot. We've talked about unemployment rates, CPI, inflation. I want you to really think about all the negative news that's been out there over the last couple of years. Since you've been listening to the podcast, and think about how the market has done since that time. There's always going to be something to worry about. And so when I think about doing 150 episodes, I wrote down a list here of the things that I think are kind of important and the things that have stuck out to me about recording this many episodes. And I looked back. I scrolled all the way back to episode 1, and I really didn't realize the date that was. So the first episode was March 6th of 2021. That would have been 2 days after my 40th birthday. And that seems just like me to set this kind of goal up on that kind of a significant birthday. But you look at March 6th, 2021, when we started this podcast, and I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you today, but the Dow Jones was at 34,548. Today it's at 43,129, which is a gain of 24.8%. So let's call it 25%. The S&P was at 4194, and it's currently at 5857, which is almost a 40% increase. NASDAQ was at 13,600, and now it's at 20,000 for a gain of 33.5%. And so I think one of the things I'm most proudest about this podcast, as far as our longevity is concerned, is the fact that we have gone through a full market cycle together. So we went from the market being high after COVID to the market being low through 2022, and then obviously coming back out the other side, and now we're at all-time highs again for the market. I really think that is significant because when you look at the academic data, if you can have, for me, clients, for you as an investor, if you can make it through your first full cycle as an investor and realize that investments are going to go down and that things aren't going to stay bad forever and that they're going to come back up, the lesson in that is just tremendous. And it's really difficult. I mean, it's actually impossible to create those lessons for somebody without them actually going through it. I mean, you actually have to take an investor on that journey through that journey to experience it before you really know how you're going to react as an advisor, as an investor, all of these things to really be able to put that into place. So those are one of the things that sticks out to me most. The second one is also going to be just consistency. Consistency in everything. It's one of the things that I have always kind of thought about is, being consistent, being disciplined, all of these things that make you a, more effective human, a better investor. Like consistency is just something that you have to have if you want to have any kind of success. Is you just have to be willing to do the best job you can, control the things that you can control, your effort, your time, the decisions you make, and then everything else, you got to kind of be okay with kind of where it lands. And so we have definitely done that here as we've grown the audience, as we have, gotten more successful, all of those things. I don't check the numbers as much as I used to. I read a couple statistics, when I first started the podcast. I remember reading some things that said like most podcasts make it to 7 episodes. And I thought, okay, well, I can commit to 8. I can be better than, the 7 episodes, right? And then it was also like hard for podcasts to get 10,000 downloads. That was a big deal. I've actually been to a couple parties where, the celebration was 10,000 downloads. So after we hit those marks, I really haven't checked those statistics as much. I am amazed, when you look at some of the statistics on how many podcasts are out there. Right now, there are 3,429,000 different podcasts. And so when I say, like, I know you could be listening to something else and probably something better. I mean, let's be honest, you could probably be listening to something better. I appreciate the time that you have given me over the years to listen. It's just amazing, like the number, like that sheer number. And especially like last week, I talked about Malcolm Gladwell and The Tipping Point. He has a podcast, and I've mentioned this before too. I know on an episode, I don't remember the number, but Malcolm Gladwell does a podcast called Revisionist History that is so good. Like it was literally like I didn't want to listen to it because it makes me like self-conscious about what I'm doing because his is so good. So there's always going to be somebody a little bit better, a little bit better podcast, but it's still about the consistency. It's about building not only like your audience, but the community that you have. So with me, it's clients, it's students, it's, those in between. And so I like the fact that we've been able to really stay true to what we discussed in the beginning and just kind of keep that going forward. I am, thinking about, something funny. I thought a couple things here. Number one, the first episode is still downloaded way too often. It is downloaded every single week. The first episode is still replayed somewhere by somebody. And gosh, I mean, I can't, I actually haven't gone back to listen to it. I don't think I can. I'm so green. I'm so new to this. I know it's almost like an audio journal for my life, basically the last couple of years, kind of the ups and downs. When you look through it, I've never been really good about, when you listen to people who are very successful, one of the things they always tell you is to keep a journal. I've never been really consistent with that as far as like writing things down, but I do like that the podcast has basically become for me kind of an audio journal, maybe video journal of, kind of the last couple of years of my life. It's easier for me, audio, like the speaking thing has always been much easier for me than like writing. But I also like the one thing about podcasting that I really do enjoy is that it's kind of fluid. And so the things I discuss on a weekly basis, I'm not concretely associated with those like you do when you put things into writing and how people hold you accountable over time. Because especially with finance and the way the stock market works and those kind of things, you have to be willing to change your mind. You have to be willing to come back on the next week and say, hey, I was wrong. I said that a couple of weeks ago on something. I was like, geez, in 2 days I could be wrong on this. And I was. But that's the thing is like the numbers always change. The news stories always change. All of those things are always constantly changing. And so in order to be a good investor, to be a good advisor, you have to be willing to kind of make the tough decision and change your mind at some point. So I'm constantly surprised recording this, that when I talk to people during the week and I bring something up and they go, oh yeah, I remember you talking about this on your podcast. So that is the weird thing about doing this, is I can see how many people are listening, but I can't see who's listening. I don't know, so I start having a conversation with somebody and they say, oh yeah, I remember you talking about that. And I have no idea that they were listening, but it's kind of neat to, when those things happen, and it happens a little bit more, it happens more than I thought it would, honestly. And so, again, this podcast was kind of the idea was born out of the idea of me wanting to stay connected to students, stay connected to clients, as as the audience grows, the people I'm connected to grow, to be able to kind of have a place to put all my thoughts, allow people to be able to listen, but also keep that, that community together. And I think we've done a good job of that. Like Instagram, we have over 5,200 followers now. The YouTube page continues to grow. The number of listeners continues to grow. The number of people who have sent an episode to somebody, I think, is probably the neatest thing. How many people have just sent an episode to somebody and said, hey, I think you will enjoy this. You should listen. There's some good information here. I think that has been nice. I have, I'm not trying to sell anybody anything. There's no ads. I really, we've always thought about just doing good educational stuff without any kind of slant or any kind of hidden anything, and just provide good financial education, which I believe is so sorely needed everywhere, is just good financial education without some kind of angle or without any kind of, me needing to push something. And so, from that standpoint, I'm very happy with things that have gone on. The other topic, I guess I gotta get better at words. Even 100, there's always things to work on. I think for me personally, when you think about when most people think about the podcast, they think about maybe the audience members or the listeners that I'm impacting, but that's, I'm going to use a term here that Guy Spear turned me on to, which is long-term greedy on my end. There's a lot of good that comes out of the podcast for me. And for me, it's thinking about the market, it's staying caught up on the market, which I'm going to do, regardless, but also the lessons that I'm teaching on the podcast. It's not only for you, but it's also for me. It reminds me of the things that I've learned and the things I need to stay aware of when I'm going through like 2022, which was a very, very difficult year. 2022 for me professionally was the hardest year I've ever had. And so by recording the podcast and talking about the bad days and talking about the things that I knew were right academically, it made it easier for me emotionally, and it reminded me of the things I needed to do for myself and my clients and the people that I interact with. It reminded me of those lessons that I needed to basically hear myself saying over and over again to make it through those really hard times. And so from my standpoint, there's a lot of value in that. You hear yourself say that, you hear yourself say, be brave, the Warren Buffett's, be fearful when everybody else is greedy and be greedy when everybody else is fearful. Like, you hear those things, and just hearing yourself say those things over and over again, it does help. Like, it does make a difference. And so for me, saying those things, teaching others those lessons, there's also a lesson in that to me, which is it holds me accountable to the things that I teach and helps me try to, hit that level for people. And so, as the kids say, as my daughter would say, being dialed in. And so from that standpoint, it's valuable. I forgot to say this earlier, but I don't know if you saw where Elon Musk this week, unveiled the robo-taxi, the robo-van. But to me, it was the robot. I don't know if you saw the robots. Did you see the Tesla robots, the Optimus robots that were serving drinks, that were the bartenders at this event? Man, I look at that and I think about where that's going to be in 5 years. I mean, it's so exciting when you think about the first 150 episodes and what we saw as far as ending COVID, seeing the meme stocks go up, the NFTs, all of that, seeing the huge demise of all of that, of FTX, of, you know, what came out of that, going down into 2022, 10 rate hikes by the Fed. We've gone through that rate cycle together. We've now seen the Fed start to lower rates. But you think about what's going to occur over the next, 150 episodes or 3 years. I mean, there's some exciting stuff. I mean, yes, we have things to worry about. There's always going to be political things. There's always going to be, geopolitical things around the world to worry about, wars and whatnot. But there's also a lot of good. There's also a lot of companies that are really trying to change the world. There's a lot of exciting technology, and there's a lot of things that are going to be, amazing over the next 3 years. All the companies that are working on AI that'll probably go public. All of these things that we kind of get to discover together. And so that's kind of my thought here is the time's going to pass anyways, right? Whether I did the podcast, 3 years ago or whatever it is, 150 episodes, whether I recorded those episodes or not, the time's going to pass regardless. And if I do another 150 or if I don't, the time's going to pass regardless. So you have to spend it doing something that's important to you and spending it on habits that are going to be important to you and get you where you want to be in the next couple of years. And so when I think about this, I think about the doors that the podcast is open for me. I think about the interviews I'm kind of got on the schedule and some of the people in the financial world that I've been able to meet. And I really think that, momentum, sometimes it takes a little bit for that momentum to start, just like in investing, right? It's like this snowball you're pushing down the hill. I think it's the same thing. Like I get to do some pretty neat interviews. I get to meet some pretty amazing people. And this podcast is just all part of that ecosystem, right? The teaching, the advising, all of it. And it just has allowed me to be able to have some doors open for me, talk to some people I didn't think I would talk to, and just give me a voice that I think is pretty neat. When I first started the podcast, the goal was for me to have more listeners than I taught in a classroom. That happened faster than I thought it would. But, that was kind of the initial goal. I really never had any kind of, I've never tried to make any money on this thing or anything like that. It's never been a monetary thing for me. But I think it is neat that to be able to reach the people that I get to reach and talk to some people and reach out to people and kind of just allow myself to be out there has been pretty neat. So we will see kind of how it evolves, but it is one of those things that if you have something in your life you're nervous about doing, you should just trust fall and do something you're a little uncomfortable with and see where it takes you. I mean, that's really what everything's about, right? Is just taking a little bit of a chance and seeing what happens. But again, if you've listened to these episodes, there's some investments you wish you would have made, all of those things, all of it is correctable, right? The next, 3 years or whatever, like the time's going to pass. So whatever goal you have, you got to put one foot in front of the other. You got to go towards it and you got to do the best you can. You can control your effort. You can control the time that you put in. You can control all of those things. You might not be able to control the outcome, but if you control the controllables, you do the things you should be doing, you got to be okay with the results. So from me, I really do appreciate all of those of you that have listened, the ones that you've reached out, you send messages, you send questions, we answer them. That part has been really fun. So again, if there's something you want us to cover, something you want us to talk about, some questions, I'm going to interview Guy Spear less than a month from now out of Zurich. He's out of Zurich. We're going to meet in New York. We got a podcast studio rented. If there's questions you want me to ask him, send them to us. Send it to us on Instagram, wherever, reach out, and we will try to get those answered. So as always, don't mistake activity for achievement, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.